to the presentation and get to some of the substance of it. I think that a couple of points to lead off with is the fact that very few states in America actually allow for the Army of Teachers. There's only 9 states that have laws that are explicitly aimed at Army teachers and school staff. And when we look at the reason why, especially in the face of the tragedies that we've seen happen, we think that one of the reasons why that is because there's absolutely no evidence that shows, again, being an organization focused on research and evidence, there's no evidence to show that Army teachers increases school safety.
Really?
Even in states that do allow for the Army of Teachers and school staff, the majority of school districts do not opt into that program. In Florida, where they created a program to Army teachers and school staff, the top 16 school districts in Florida opted out of that program proactively, which covers over 80% of the students there. And even here in Arkansas, right, even though it's law and currently you can arm teachers through the CSSO program, the majority of school districts do not do that. We think it's because that there's a lack of evidence to show that, and the overwhelming opposition that we see on the ground from professionals, from teachers, which we'll talk about a little bit later, law enforcement organizations and things like that. However, what we do know is that Army teachers ignores research that shows the presence of a gun increases the risks posed to children. So if we look at the research, firearms are now the second leading cause of death for American children and teens, the second leading cause of death. A recent study shows that the majority of children are aware where their parents store their guns. Children access guns even though parents and adults might not think that they are. More than 1/3 reported handling their parents' guns, 40% of them without their parents' knowledge. The vast majority of fatal unintentional shootings of children are self-inflicted or are by other children involved in unsecured gun. And I think that anybody that keeps tabs on the news that's out as we do, unfortunately, as we have to monitor news clips that are happening in states across the country, and we see how many unintentional shootings are happening and how many involve children. It really is overwhelming. Access to a firearm, irrespective of age, doubles the risk of death by suicide. And so when we look at something like this, I think thinking that this for some reason will be different in a school doesn't make much sense, right? We see those trends happening in general at home and in general life. We'll touch on some unintentional shootings that have even happened, or unintentional discharges, I should say, on school grounds across the country just this year. But I like to think of this as kind of 2 buckets, right? We have the evidence and we have the research, but we also want to think about this logically, right? You know, we talk a lot about common sense sometimes. And those variety of questions that we have to ask ourselves in an active shooter situation that a teacher who sure may go through some training through something like the CSSO program, but really we can't know all the variables that are going to happen. Should a teacher leave a student alone? Locked in a classroom without supervision as they pursue an active shooter? How do you keep the students safe when a shooter enters a classroom and you return fire, possibly drawing fire towards the students that you're trying to protect? What if I am shot and a student picks up a gun when I'm injured? Or what if, God forbid, an unintentional shooting happens and I shoot a student? Is that something that we are just willing to accept? And again, I think that as we talk about some of these school districts that, across Arkansas also, that we say have these best practices, you can't know what's going to happen in an active shooter situation because it's such a chaotic thing. And we've seen that with law enforcement, who are trained professionals, and we see that in everyday life when there's tried to be interventions.
I'd like to add here, we see